So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Antonio Talk Show. We are trying to uncover, as I always say in these opening messages, the future of work, the future of healthcare, the future of AI, the future of anything. We're trying to solve the future, but we're trying to see the future before it happens so we can help our listeners and guests navigate what's going on in this world. We were just talking a moment ago, Tony, and I had to pause you because COVID has shifted everything, and which is phenomenal, but scary. It's uncharted waters in many places. It's a lot of workload in many places, and particularly in healthcare. And today my special guest is, excuse me, there's people joining in. And today my special guest is Tony Bonazzo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Bonazzo. Yes.
Bonazzo. So Tony Bonazzo, Tony and I go way back. Well, a couple of years ago, we started discussing certain things, and I'm really grateful to have you on the show today, Tony. But before we step into the solving the future, I'd love you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tony Bonazzo. I was a former physician that moved on to business many years ago when I did not like what was happening in healthcare back in the 80s and 90s, and said, this isn't for me, and decided that technology, innovation, and business is where I want to be, and parlayed a career in consulting for many, many years. And currently I'm a physician provider recruiter, and have quite a few clients that I'm working with here in the US.
Amazing. So you said that you started your career in the doctorate realm. Right. What made you want to become a doctor, Tony? And let's go a bit further back into sort of like, why was it doctoring that you wanted to choose?
I was drawn to helping people and medicine at a very early age. I really enjoyed being able to help people get better. So even at a young age, I was just crazy about saying, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. I want to help the world. I want to help people. And went through medical school, started a residency, and said, there's a lot of things in healthcare that I'm disenchanted with. And if I have to get up every day and say I hate what I do, I'm not going to do it. I did have a business background. My family owned businesses. And I said, what else do I know? I know computers, I know technology. And I became a technologist consultant and ran that through the wave of the PC era, the heyday in the US, and mail order computers. And then I went into healthcare about 11 years ago, and that's where I found my niche.
Well, I love that. And I often sort of, when I'm on this show, I'm asking questions because I really want to find out the information, right? So I want to understand. So, when you say go into wanting to study medicine or being a doctor in the US, for instance, how long is that journey to become a doctor?
Well, you do your high school, and then you do 4 years of medical school, and then you do your internship, which is another year, and then a residency. So the basic is after 4 years of what we call university, that's after high school. Then you have to do 3 years in a hospital. That's the minimum to get out and say, I could be a practicing doctor. Now, if you want to go on from there, you have to do fellowship and various other subspecialties, and you can add 10 more years on until you're done. And if you get into like the high cardiothoracic and the plastic surgery, it's many years and many dollars later.
Many dollars. That's the main one. That's the main.
Many dollars. It's not cheap.
What are we talking about in terms of dollars wise? If you want to get,
you could end up with a $500,000.
Whoa, yeah. $500,000 debt.
Yes. And
wow.
And hopefully that when you are hired by a firm or a clinic or a hospital, they will pay for part of it. So you negotiate your salary and say, and you've got to pay my student loans to get me out of this $500,000 hole.
How, so $500,000 is a lot of money, right? I mean, so. It's a hell of a lot of money. And so do people ever pay it off in their careers? Do they pay it off?
You have to. Okay. It's not something you could walk away from.
What?
You are bound by the terms of the student loans. And this has actually been a big source subject within the last year here in the US, where the students who graduated with degrees, whatever it may be, after 4 years that have $100,000 and $150,000 in debt, say we just can't afford this anymore. With the pay range is not high enough to carry the debt load. So there's a big pushback right now in saying we really need in the US to understand how do we manage the debt load of all these graduating university students that can't afford it. They can't buy a house. They can't move. They're living in their parents' basement, paying $1,000 a month just to pay back the interest on a student loan. It's very difficult.
Well, there was this interesting thing. I'll try and find it now. And this was UK based, but it was something around in the 1970s. The average house cost around £7,000 in the UK. Okay, and the average salary was. Let me actually find it for you, because this is very interesting, because I think the cost of living has gone so far up today that people of my generation, Tony, okay, they can't buy houses. They can't, because even if they have £100,000 in deposit, that's still not enough to get you a home, right?
And not at all. The average home in the U.S. is about $350,000 US dollars. But there has been such a change in the mindset of the millennials and all the other generations below. They don't want to be tied down to a home. They want to be able to rent, pick up, and then go somewhere, which in my generation, the first thing you wanted to do is, get your home and start your life. And that was your security blanket. But everything's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really surprises me, because so here we go. What I've got here, right? So in the 1960s, Tony, right? This is 1960s. The average house price was £4,000, okay, in the UK. And then the average income per year was 11,000. So, you'd spend like half a year working, and then you could buy your house, right? If we look today, the average price of a house today in the UK is £250,000, okay, and the average salary is 29,000. So you take that time, like it's almost 100 times the value of a house, but 3 times the average salary over those since the 60s to 2022. It's crazy.
That's certainly true. No, and again, people have resigned to saying, I can't afford a house and I'm going to be okay with it. And they're going to make other arrangements. But it's changed since my generation.
Well, yeah, that's it. And also, I think there's a cultural thing as well. So, like, for instance, I was chatting to someone who's from Germany. They were saying that they don't tend to buy houses, same as in Sweden. They don't tend to buy houses. The renting is a thing. But it's something about this culture, that like our culture and US culture, which is like having your own home is quite
security.
Security, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But we'll see.
Absolutely. So that amazes me. So at some point, there's some people leaving university today with $500,000 of student debt. In the US, how does is that a government? Are you in debt to the government, or are you in debt to a private company?
Well, there are various ways when you decide that you are going to go to university. First thing you do is you go to your parents and they say, okay, this is all we can afford to give you. Now you're going to have to go and apply for student loans. So there are different grants, loans. They can be private funding. They can be through banks. They can be through the schools. So you have to search out the best deal to see who is going to be able to afford you this loan. And then after you graduate, the payments start to become due. And there are interest only, or you can pay interest in principal. But most of the salary-wise, I'd say somebody with a 4-year degree getting out of university can get a job for about $50,000. Let's say that's basic for a pretty good job, white-collar job. If they have $150,000 in loans, they are not being able to afford anything except the interest and payment on that loan, and living with roommates or living with their parents. And you can't walk away from it. Like I said, this follows you for many, many, many years. Years
Yeah.
ago, you used to be able to write it off if you declared bankruptcy. That has changed, and this
So
follows
even
you.
if you declare bankruptcy right now, you can't go away from it.
No,
Oh my Lord.
no, they cut that out.
They cut that out. Wow, that's surprising, because I think in the UK, if you declare bankruptcy, you do write off your loans. But the student loans here, Tony, they're I mean, I went to university and mine was £9,000 per year. That was my, and I was,
I
do
have
you
a
know,
former employee that is over there now studying in East London, and his 7,000 pounds per semester, or I think it's going to be $14,000 for the 1 year program, 14,000 pounds for the 1 year program, and our schools here are $50,000 and $60,000 a semester.
so how does that feel for like the people who, are less people going to university, or are they still going to university more?
Well, I wanted to bring this up. Before, the larger companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, said, we need somebody that has a 4-year college degree to show that you're the type of person that we need to hire. After the great resignation and the revolution of employees, now they're saying, you know what, we're going to look at the employee, see if they have the smarts, see if they can be trainable, retrainable, their education levels, and can they fit the job? So this has completely changed the way these large companies look at people. Before, it says, do not apply unless you have a bachelor's arts, a bachelor of science, a bachelor of engineering. Now they say, let's look at the person, and is this person a good fit? So it's different, which before it was not. So this COVID thing did come make a change.
But does that apply to, say for instance, the medical professionals? Because medical
professionals is different, obviously, but
yeah.
I'm talking about all of the other careers that are out there today in technology and engineering and things like that, where they would only look at degrees because they needed the certification and all those different levels. There are jobs out there that you don't have to have all of that, because they're able to train the people that can do the position.
Yeah. So let's skip forward then. Let's jump into COVID. So how did COVID impact the healthcare industry in the US, Tony? And also an offshoot question I have from that is, how did it impact you as a oh, actually, no, we need to step back, Tony, because I need to find out that transition from doctorate to business. Like what really made you move?
Okay, well, since I said this isn't for me any longer, I again said my parents had businesses, and they bought their first computer system and to run the business. They said, my father said, you're a smart kid. We need a computer. I don't know what it does, but make it happen and work it. So I learned what a computer could do for
what was the computer, by the way?
Oh my God, it was a Mag 80, which had Winchester discs, and I'm dating myself. These were 12-inch discs that would take all night to process the accounts payable, the receivable, and inventory. I mean, this is going back where you'd set it at 6 o'clock at night and come back the next day and it said processed. We didn't have the instant programs of today, click and done. So I got out of my medical career, and I opened a mail order business of computer hardware and software with some family members, and came very successful in the early days of selling hardware and software over the internet, taking ads out in PC Magazine and Macworld and all of those companies. So I rode that wave of becoming an entrepreneur.
Was you selling mainly Apple computers? Were you?
It was well, Apple at the time was not, you were not able to sell Apple unless you were an authorized dealer. So you couldn't black market Apple products. The way around that is we bought an Apple store.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing.
So if anybody from Apple's listening, it's me. Anyway, and that's another story how we got caught. But so anyway, it was all of the Dell, the Microsoft, the Epson back in the day, the Compaqs, all of those computer products. We would take large ads out in the various magazines and have an 800 numbers, and do mail order computer components. And I rode that wave till I decided that we had enough with that. And I said I wanted to become a consultant. So I went to work for PC Magazine as a consultant. And what I did is I said, listen, Microsoft is taking a full page ad. IBM's taking a full page ad. Everybody's taking a full page ad in this magazine. And in the back of the book, we have all these resellers that saying, buy this, buy this, buy this. So I went to those companies and through a distributor and I said, listen, you're advertising and you're just creating branding, but you're not selling. We have all these resellers in the back of the book that are selling. Why don't we match all of that? So it says you're doing a full page ad about how great your PC is. We'll feature it with an 800 number and they can call and order it. But for every PC we sell, we want 3% so that we can use that to pay for the dark. And that's how the co-op industry started in the computer industry. So I was kind of behind that whole force.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then I took it one step further. A company approached me and said, we want to be in the mail order business. And I said, well, you have to get a warehouse. You need $10 million. You need to do all these things unless I go to the major distributors and I say, listen, we're going to buy our product from you, but you're going to ship it to the customer. And I, well, you know what? We talked about that years ago, and there's software under someone's desk, but we never did anything. I said, I'll be in California tomorrow. Let's talk about it. And that's how the drop shipping mode started, because we put that in place. And now that became the industry standard. So I had a couple of wins. So that was my business sense of saying, you know what? There's a better mousetrap, and we're going to find it.
Yeah, totally. And so what led you down the route of recruitment then? Because I mean,
okay, so I rode the technology wave, and then decided that, hey, this thing is going to stop. And I saw a ad for Gannett. Gannett is a big company in the U.S. They have radio stations, billboards, magazine, and they were hiring for a Nursing Spectrum, which was a magazine for the nursing industry. It was well known. And they said, would you like to be the New England sales rep? And I was like living in Connecticut, which I still do. And I said, sure, why not? So I had the medical background and I had this selling background and I had the magazine background. So it was a great fit. So I loved it. And I thought it was the greatest thing. And I did that for many years. And then the company was sold off. And I said, okay, I need another home. And I got involved in physician recruitment and was able to work for a well-known company, get my feet wet, and then parlayed it into my own business.
Amazing. So you entering recruitment, right? What was your training like when it comes to recruitment? I mean, because as a salesperson, I mean, you're a salesperson, no doubt, right? That's who you are. But did you find learning the recruitment world easy? Did you find it boring? How did you find it?
Well, you know what? The upper hand I had was in the recruitment business because of my degree. I can go in and say, hi, this is Dr. Bonazzo. And that led a cachet of, I suppose, exactly, that opened doors. People would meet with me and they would basically let me say what I had to say. So that was the way I was able to really set the playing field, that I had something to say. And when I talk to a provider about, you know, you're looking to make a change, you're not happy what's going on in medicine, they go, oh, you understand, you know what I'm going through, which separates me from Billy Jane or Sarah Smith calling and saying, hi, I have a position job. Are you interested? And you don't understand.
Genuinely get it. You genuinely get what they're talking about.
Right. So that opened a lot of doors for me. And it allowed me to become pretty successful at it because of that feeling that you get what I'm trying to do in my life now. So it was a kind of a natural progression. And
do you think sales has changed much since, you know, the days of putting out print ads to now? How sales changed? Because it seems like, because I'm very obsessed with sales, Tony, and I love to understand the history of sales and how it all works and what worked back in the day, what works now. But it seems like you could pull the wool over people's eyes back in the day. Do you know what I mean? And people would buy easier. Whereas today, everyone's a bit more like, you know, you got to sniff around. You got to wine and dine me a little bit, not in the form of going to restaurants, but you've got to give me a bit of attention. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and because of the internet, people can see, is this really what I'm paying for? Does it really make sense? There's a lot of competition in everything today. I mean, years ago, you'd open a magazine, you'd see a couple articles or a couple of ads, and you say, okay, I guess I'll buy this. There wasn't Google Shopping where you go on and say, give me the best price for this. So that in the consumer products, basically now before you buy anything, you're going to search for the best price and
reviews.
And reviews and everything else that goes along with it. Same thing in the sales of years ago. You went in, you created a relationship with that person you're talking, and you're saying, hey, I understand you're trying to find a position for that doctor. Here's our package. We put it here, we post it there, we do this, we do that. And, here's the X, what it's going to cost you. And that relationship building is the only thing they had to go on. Now, today, you've got everybody on these specialized job boards. They can post their own. They can get the applications direct. And so you really have to sell them. Why am I different? Why am I better? What can I do that you can't do yourself? And that includes, we're going to streamline. We're going to interview the providers. We're going to, take care of all that you don't want to have to do and just present you with the best candidate. So, everything has changed because of the internet and how you can do things yourself, which you couldn't do before.
And what about from a candidate attraction piece? Do you think it's still quite a very simple manner? Obviously, we have LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great tool. It connects to people. How does LinkedIn work for you, Tony, in your work?
I'll be honest with you. I don't use LinkedIn to get great results. There are niche sites that providers or physicians, we call them providers here, or doctors. There are niche sites that are more effective for us in recruiting candidates. LinkedIn, yes, you're up there and someone says, hey, you're a doctor at such and such a hospital and you're a radiologist.
They're probably not active on that platform.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like, I'm just here because my department says I need to be here and I need to send a few things out. But are they really in the mode for looking for a position? No. But there are other niche sites that doctors go to and nurses and whoever, where they say, I am interested and I'm going to take the step of putting my CV or resume, but in the medical world, it's a CV. I'm going to put my CV up and I want you to contact me. So now those are the ones who are being proactive and saying, what do you have for a job out there? So that's the difference than LinkedIn. I just have a profile and, if someone reaches out to me and says, hello, I have a job for you. I may be in the mindset of change. I may have hit them at the right time, but they're not as proactive as going and placing their information, their phone number, their cell, their email.
So suppose with you then, because, let's say, for instance, we run a tech recruitment agency, right, as in one of our businesses. And our recruiters, they can be active on LinkedIn because a lot of the skills that we're looking for, or the decision makers, they're usually on LinkedIn at least once, twice a day, right? So they put out content, the content is seen, and then they're on the minds of these individuals all the time, depending on how quality the content is, of course. It has to be quality. It can't just be, I'm hiring,
Right, right.
There's value add. So we by doing this, our recruiters and any recruiter around the world, if you put out content that's value add to people, you're able to be on the minds of people without actually having to give them a call. Now, what it sounds like with you, Tony, and in your profession and the way you recruit, sounds like you have to actually be calling them up, checking in with people. It sounds like you have to be networking very actively because you don't have that platform, which is a medical platform for you to share content to medical professionals.
Right, and because there's so many specialties and subspecialties, I'm not talking about the latest technology or cancer drug or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, hey, I have a interventional cardiologist position in Tampa, Florida. Are you interested? And that's to the extent of, and you see that all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, we're hiring. We need a hospitalist, or we need an internal medicine provider. Click me or DM me if you are interested. We're looking for the people or the providers who are saying, I want a job and here's my CV. That's when we pick up the phone and say, hey, I thank you for sending me your resume, your CV. What are you looking for? What's going on in your life? Why are you making a change? And it goes from there.
How important do you think to your role is networking then? Is constantly chatting to people, like even if they're not actively looking for a job, do you find that you're pipelining people? Do you find you're pipelining business? Like, how are you doing that?
Yes, it's very important because today's doctor may be very happy in his situation where he's at. 6 months from now, the wife, the husband, the kids, whatever, may have to move. They may have to change. We're getting a lot of providers nowadays that are saying, well, let me step back a little. Years ago, you can have your own medical office and you could run your business. And then HIPAA came in, which is the healthcare law that states everybody must be on medical records so we can share information and blah, blah, blah. So the provider who had his private practice had to decide, do I want to pay $80,000 and convert my office to medical records? Do I want to hire a IT person to make sure the system runs? Or do I say, heck, I'm out of here. I'll go work for a hospital group, a multi-specialty group, where I'm not involved in all of that. So that came the change in medicine in the US. You know, the guy that or gal that had their own office said, I don't need this aggravation. I want to practice medicine. I don't want to be chasing Medicare claims, and I don't want to be chasing reimbursement from insurances. I will go join a facility. So a lot of facilities were bought up by hospitals, universities, even venture capitalists were buying medical groups. So it changed.
That's crazy. Anyway, I'll let you finish, but that's crazy for me. Venture VCs buying medical groups.
Okay, but what that does is they're in the business to make money.
Of course.
And they're saying to the doctor, you have 7 minutes to see that patient. And they have to give you a 10 review when they finish. And then you have to make sure that, you know, the standards are up. The provider who's a provider is saying, I'm a doctor. You know nothing about medicine. Yeah, you made a lot of money. And yeah, you can buy my business. But you don't know anything about the patient. You don't know anything about the practice. So for you to come in and say, I need to hit these 10s in satisfaction, and I need to spend 7 minutes only with a patient.
So consumerized, isn't it? That's crazy.
Okay, so what does that say to the doctor? I'm out of here.
Yeah, sure. That's it. But the interesting thing about that actually is that, so obviously in the UK, it's all state funded, right? So we have free healthcare, which is awesome. We're blessed, you know. We have to pay for our prescriptions, but they're not high costs, you know, for prescriptions. And you know, I'm really blessed to I feel you know, we are really blessed to have the NHS. But at the same time, at some points, there is massive failures within the NHS system because you know, in hospitals, people they're not trying their best. So there's a lot of oversight that's happened. You know, it's people who are going and it's just a job for them or whatever. And you know, they're not actually giving that full emphasis on care because it's a public system, whereas private, you know, there is, you know, you'll get the reward is the fee, you know. So if we give excellent service, then we get excellent profits.
Right. You know and if we get excellent ratings, we get a bonus. So yes, we're dancing a fine line of delivering patient care, getting an excellent survey reviews, but also being in the guidelines of what the organization sets. So when a doctor says,
Tony, you prefer free healthcare with not as great service, or private healthcare with excellent service and speed as well? Because the wait lists in the NHS are ridiculous as well.
And I'll be honest with you, I'd rather go for the better healthcare. Okay. Yeah. It's important, and especially in certain cases. I mean, if you need a hip replacement, we could schedule you within a week here. If you need, you have a massive heart attack, we can put 2 stents in your heart the next morning. I don't know the healthcare system there, so I don't want to misspeak, but we have great healthcare. But you're going to pay for it. Your insurance is going to pay for it, or your company's going to pay for it.
Well, it depends on the trust as well. So, for instance, my dad has recently gone through some health issues, okay? And he went to the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, and he had a terrible experience. He had to have a coloscopy, or is it colonoscopy? So, a camera.
Colonoscopy.
Yeah, colonoscopy. He had to have that. And then he also had to have an endoscopy. So,
endoscopy, okay. So he had some gastric issues.
What they did, but bless him, in that now he went through a major operation. He's now got stoma and whatnot. But anyways, he's on the mend now, which I'm really blessed for. But what had happened was he went to the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, which is his local hospital. And when they performed the endoscopy, they had given him some sedative, but then the colonoscopy, they didn't give any sedative, and he felt everything. And he was like, this was a terrible experience. And the gentleman who was doing the colonoscopy, he quickly at the end put down that he gave sedative because he gave the sedative after he did it. So just to make sure that he covered his tracks. And so we're currently in sort of legal battles with them because it was
a malpractice case.
Malpractice, absolutely. But then my dad went, so this was that NHS trust, because in the UK it's based on trusts, right? So you got trust here, which is the Luton and Dunstable or Bedfordshire Trust or whatever it may be. But then you've got another trust, which is another hospital, okay? And they're all responsible for their own budgets, their own, obviously there is consistency across the board, but their own budgets, their own programs and whatnot. Then he went a week later to another hospital, which was just outside, called Lister, and he got amazing treatment. They saved his life, basically. I mean, he almost died, right? And this was in January. So they absolutely saved his life, and he got amazing treatment in that hospital. So, you know, I don't know what it is, to be honest, but that consistency just isn't there. Whereas I think if it was private, which of course costs an arm and a leg,
right,
you'd have a major consistency, even if you went to the one in California or the one in New York. You know?
Right. We do have a quality of care here. I mean, Adele went to Boston to have the nodules taken off her throat. So, you know, she trusted her singing voice to a surgeon in the U.S. So, I mean, that speaks volumes, and she's phenomenal. But so, you know, we have such major strides in healthcare. Cancer research, there is money and funding for us. I don't feel like years ago, if you went in a hospital, you would say, you know, am I going to get well? It's not, am I going to get well? It's going to be, how long will it take for me to get well here? So that's the difference. We have, unless it's one of those cases where, you know, it's just, there's nothing we can do. But my mom recently passed away at 94 a couple of weeks ago.
94 though. Amazing.
94. But you know, we were able to, she was vibrant, and you know, she was a good viable citizen up till the age of 94 and passed within a week. So again, medicine has really come a long way in the US, and we have many people who have an illness or a disease, and they're able to live a long and prosperous life. So
yeah. And how does it work if you don't have any insurance? Like, how does that work?
Well, you can go into any emergency room or any hospital in the US, and they cannot turn you away. So for the people that are underprivileged, who cannot afford it, they will be treated just like everybody else. Now, they'll get a bill for it, but you know, if you can't pay it, you can't pay it, and then it'll be written off or something like that. But so you
it's not as Orwellian and crazy as people make it out to be. Where it's you have to pay for your healthcare, you know, like.
Well, you don't. But the biggest problem is in underserved communities, they don't go to the hospital. We have underserved population that say, you know what, I have diabetes, I have or I have heart problems, or I have high blood pressure problems, but you know what, I can't afford the medicine and I can't afford the doctor. I'm not going to go. And that's why going forward, we are trying to do a couple of things to put not providers or not physicians in local underserved areas, but putting a nurse practitioner, a nurse that became a doctor through additional education to service those needs. Free clinics, they're another big part. Really, for the hospitals, all opened up small little regional centers to service these people that don't have insurance. So they're not walking in the emergency room because their son has a cold. They go to a less expensive setting. They get the medicine that they need, and they're not filling an ER with, you know, my child sick while someone has a gunshot and someone has a cardiac arrest. So, you know, there are ways of getting health, but you have to be in the mindset, I want to go. And that's where the problem is. The underserved population figures, I can't afford it. I don't want to go, and I'll just live with my disease, which is it's unfortunate.
Yeah, of course. So let's step back to March of 2020 when something big hit the world, really, at that scale. I think we all know what it was, COVID-19. What were your thoughts when it was first sort of surfacing, you know?
Okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I had arrived on March 14th.
Living the dream.
For a vacation. I was at the Marriott in Fort Lauderdale across the street from the ocean. And on March 15th, I got a notice that we are closing the hotel. Please vacate. The world has stopped. And I said, well, first of all, there's no flights, so I can't go anywhere. And I've already paid for a month of being here. So I ended up staying there for the month, me and the front desk and the cleaning woman, because I wasn't going anywhere and I wasn't going home. And so that was the first, oh my God, what's really going on? I mean, the streets were empty, the shops were all closed. And what had happened business-wise, all of the providers that had scheduled on-sites or video calls or whatever, the hospitals and clinics and provider facilities said, we're not interviewing that doctor, canceled, everything shut down. We have COVID here.
So everyone pulled back their interviews, their hiring, even in the healthcare sector, which is strange.
But they were dealing with emergencies coming in the front door and all hands on deck. They weren't bringing in doctors to tour the facility to say, this is where you'll be working. They were like running around trying to get masks and gloves and gowns and everything that were just, ventilators.
PPE, right? The PPE and whatnot, ventilators and whatnot. That was like
right. So everything just stopped and said, all hands service what's walking through the door with this COVID that we know nothing about. We don't know how to treat it. We don't know what drugs to use. We don't know anything. So the recruitment business went from all these doctors in place for their visits to we're not seeing anybody. And that was the first change. So everybody did what they could. They worked their triple shifts. They did all their jobs. And then the burnout came. And the people that were thinking of retiring said, I had enough. I'm out of here. And was
that a significant amount of people then?
Very much so. Very much so. And it started with the healthcare burnout. And then the people that saw that and said, you know what, I'm going to reevaluate my life. It moved over to every sector of employment in the U.S. and it made a big change.
Over here as well. I mean, especially the amount of work that the healthcare services were doing across the world for multiple countries, obviously all the countries inside. And they found that, a lot of nurses decided to leave because they felt like they're underpaid. What's the sort of average salary of a nurse
we're about 67,000 US on the entry level, up to 87, 90,000 on the higher level.
Wow. So that's way above. So average salary of a nurse.
Now this is an RN with a Bachelor of Science degree. So I'm sure you have something equivalent to. This is a 4-year degree.
Yeah. So the Royal College of Nursing, the average salary of an NHS nurse is £33,000. So if we take your entry level, which is say $60,000, USD in GBP. That's 40. So we're £15,000 underpaid compared to that's pounds, compared to the US payments, which is crazy. Do you know what I mean? And these people were literally saving lives and whatnot. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's the biggest issue we're having over in the UK, is that there's a massive skills gap, and gap in terms of people entering the healthcare industry, because we have a million shortage of staff in the NHS or the healthcare industry across the UK, right? And so everyone's looking overseas at the moment to I guess migrate staff to the UK, but they can't solve the problem if I can make more as a customer service assistant than I can as a nurse. Do you know, does
Right.
that make sense, right?
Yes, very much so. Why are you going to put yourself in that stressful situation of having to do patient care with staffing going around you, um, and all that stress? And you know, being a healthcare worker, as much as you try to separate that they're patients in your lives, you do become involved
Mm,
emotionally. You try not to, but they, at the end of the day, they're not a number or a case number. They are a person that you
mm,
are trying to help, obviously, and make them well. So, you know, that is a very emotional and stressful
mm.
situation. And to see that, you know, being understaffed and not being able to give the meds on time or not being able to do the care that's needed, it only puts more stress on you. So it compounds the burnout because you're saying, I can't do this any longer. And that's why many left.
Yeah, totally. And so what are you facing? What's the biggest challenge for the healthcare industry at the moment in the US?
Right now, it's the burnout, okay? And what they're doing to help with this burnout is putting in different kind of thinking, AI, okay, artificial intelligence. This is going to help us to really separate the busy work from
Mm,
what's really happening. So the installation of AI will make our jobs a little easier. Now, again, when you add artificial intelligence AI,
mm.
it has to be easy use. You can't go through 15 screens or nobody's going to use it. So it has to make your life easier, not more difficult. And that's what the companies are trying to do, is to say, we have all of this information in our national health records. Why don't we look and compare these cases, see what worked, and come out with, you know, what's the best course of treatment that will obviously be a better outcome for the patient. So AI is one of the things that's moving forward. Telemedicine, we all lived through telemedicine for the last 2 years. Okay,
Mm.
you couldn't get to see your doctor. You had that sore throat, or you had pink eye, or you had whatever it is. Telemedicine is moving, and we're getting more and more companies every day contacting us for telemed docs. Now,
Mm.
that's great and everything, but don't forget, there's a lot of technology that has to go behind there, because the telemed needs to be able to pull up your records. They need
Yeah.
to be able to see what medications you're on. They need to do all of that. Does the person in the home have a high-speed internet to be able to do the
Mm,
telemed, to do video conferencing, to show a wound on screen? So,
mm,
you know,
mm.
these are some of the bridges we need to cross to say, hey, we could telemed everybody. So that's something that we're coming over. But the greatest advance is the precision in healthcare delivery. Years ago, if you had a cancer diagnosis, breast cancer, let's say, everybody had surgery, everybody had radiation or chemo, and basically it was a one-size-fits-all type of procedure. But nowadays, we're getting into the genomes, the genes, DNA markers. So this is where the medicine in the US for cancer and various other diseases is becoming more and more specific for the diseases that you're treating. So a lot of technology will be introduced over the year, and the way of patient care and delivery is going to change. We can go into underserved communities with a mobile van. We can do blood pressure checks. We can do x-rays. We can do EKGs. And, you know, with the small devices, we can really treat patients a lot better. So
Do you
some good
think
changes.
it just, yeah, absolutely sounds amazing, to be honest. And you seem very optimistic, Tony, which is amazing.
Because it woke the whole industry up. All right.
Mm,
That's the difference. We were going along and saying that's how we always did it. That's how we always did it.
yeah,
COVID
yeah.
came along, and we can't say that's how we always did it. There was COVID threw everything into a state of shock, and we had to say, how are we going to move forward?
Yeah, well, interestingly, on that note, I mean, if you think about, even like, just take healthcare aside, but the way that people have worked and continue to work today, you know, from a professional services point of view, you know, everyone is at home. I mean, at my whole company, we're remote across the globe. Everyone's remote, right? And it's not been an issue. I mean, we were always going to go remote. We were always remote anyway. We had an office, but we were championing remote work. So yeah, it has forced everyone. It's funny what people do when they have to adapt. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Like we put it off, but as soon as we have to, within a matter of weeks, humans are fantastic at adapting, right?
But it took
And
COVID to make that change. I mean,
yeah,
do we really need a world pandemic to say we really need to think how we're doing? And even outside of the healthcare, you know, in the U.S., we're short, I don't know how many millions jobs, and the employee is now at the seat where they could say, I only want to work from home. You're going to pay me 20% more than pre-COVID. You have to have the corporate culture that I believe in. Just as a side example, in Florida, for whatever reason, they passed this law that you can't say gay or whatever, something utterly ridiculous. It just passed. And the employees...
so Goldman Sachs demanded, did you see that a couple of weeks ago? Goldman Sachs demanded all of their employees to return to work. Only half showed up. No, that's
Citibank said, if you could go out to dinners and restaurants and clubs every weekend, you could come in the office. And they said, no, we're not coming in the office. But again, it's the employee that now is driving that. And if it doesn't have the culture that they want, if it doesn't have the flexibility they want, if, you know, years ago you sat in an office and you didn't leave before your boss left because you wanted to show you're a good employee.
Yeah, it's so
you would
true.
Stay there. The minute he left, you would leave, or the minute she left, you would leave. Now it's like, my boss isn't here. I'll do my thing. Some people are adaptable to working from home, and some people are not. They don't take it seriously, and that was the big problem. Productivity went up in some situations, and it also went down. There's nobody looking at you and say, oh, you're on the phone playing, or you're playing a video game. Your boss isn't across the cubicle looking at your screen that you're, you know, what you're doing. So and some monitoring techniques came into play, which are kind of like Big Brother, where, you know, they're monitoring your keystrokes and so there's we're all figuring this out now, but it really is in the hands of the employee to say, this is what I want. I'm not going to go back to the way it was. Are you interested in hiring me?
That's and what I love about that actually is that the employee has the power. You know, before it was like, you know, from an employer point of view, you know what? Why do you want to join us? It's like now the employee's like, no, why do you want me? You know, like,
exactly.
I love that power. I love that power, and I think that actually should be like that because there's so much choice, and the reason there's so much choice is that historically there'd be companies that would be the big companies in the local community. For instance, my dad, before he was a driving instructor, he used to work for Vauxhall GM Motors. Okay, he used to work for Vauxhall, the factory. Everyone in the local community went to work at that factory. You know,
sure.
Everyone. If you did other things, you'd work locally. You wouldn't be traveling, you know, up the road. The beautiful thing about this is right now, because of this remote world we're living in, I can literally apply for a job in Peru and work as a marketing assistant for someone in Peru. I can apply for a admin role in, you know, Germany. I could apply for a recruiter position in New York, you know, and I can work from the UK here where I am.
It's opened the applicant pool, and we are finding that you are not restricted, like you say. My you know, in Connecticut, GE was one of the big employers, and everybody, like you say, from the community went to that GE. There was 15 warehouses, over 5 acres of property, and everybody worked there. But the employee pool has now opened up, you know, immensely for us, and we're using offshore sourcers from India to do some of our work, from programming and things like that. It's really made a great change. So I like that like you said, the employee gets to say, this is what I'm looking for. Is this a fit? And do you feel that we can work together? Where before it was like, we'll decide and let you know.
Now,
but we're still short. We're still short.
But where we're at, right, and I think also, Tony, if we talk about the future, I'm very interested in anticipating things, and this is what will happen. So, and I will put my mortgage on this, right? These words. So right now, the employee has the power because everyone is hiring. Every person in the world, or every company in the world, is hiring. You know, well, the majority of them.
Right.
However, very soon, and I'm not sure how soon, it could be 2 years, could be 6 months, could be 5 years, there's going to be a crash. We're due one. We're overdue one, right? Then the employer is going to have the power.
The pendulum's going to swing back.
Do you know what I mean?
Point. Yes.
And so the best advice that I could give people, and I'd love to hear your advice on this, Tony, best advice I can give people right now is make yourself irreplaceable in any role, not an organization, because at the end of the day, you can move organizations, even in the dark times, even when things fail or there's a crash, you can get jobs. There's people still hire, but you need to be the best of the best, because the hiring decisions are going to be based on, we need the best people in the business rather than we just need anyone right now who can fill the role.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense? What would you say to that, Tony?
Okay. And the other thing is, right now, employers are listening to their employees. So they need to take advantage of this and get to the table on when we implement something new, when we put a new policy and procedure in place, when we make a change, that we will have the employees part of that decision. So they now have the role to say, you know what, when you have that leadership meeting and you make all these decisions about my work hours, my work this, my type of, we want to be there. We want to be part of that. So use this time to say, because I am so valuable for you, you're going to make me part of being a valuable of the member of the team.
Yeah. Love that. Absolutely love that. So we have a couple of minutes left. I'm going to ask the audience if they have any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Hold your hand up on the metaphorical hand up. Okay, great. We have Beatrice. Anyone else? If you have a question, feel free to put your hand up. So Beatrice.
Hello. Hi, Tony. It was really nice hearing an alternative insight to the world, because I mean, last podcast that I listened in on was about AI, so it was kind of like the other end of the spectrum. So this is kind of where my question comes in. So obviously you've done healthcare, you've done business in that kind of same atmosphere. If you could pick any other industry that you wish you would have gone into, or one that you'd like to explore that's like completely different, what would you like love to learn about or be a part of?
Okay, I'll be honest with you. When I left medicine, there was a little bit of a void, feeling like I wasn't serving the world in a self-rewarding role. So I got involved in fundraising, and I do an annual pancreatic cancer fundraiser, golf outing, because I had a cousin who was the exact same age as me who passed away of pancreatic cancer. And the other thing is, I got involved with a couple of organizations that did cleft palate and cleft repair in underdeveloped countries. So I would be the marketing director. I'd raise funds. I'd have galas in New York and Boston, and I'd raise the funds to send the doctors over to these underdeveloped countries to pretty much do the operations at no charge. We'd bring all the supplies, all the nurses, all the doctors, take care of everything. And it was nothing more than getting a smile from a mother or a father saying, "Oh my God, you changed my son's or daughter's life." So when I retire, and it's not going to be anytime soon, I will go back and do my volunteerism to help share what I can with the world.
That's so wholesome. That's amazing. I love watching I've seen a lot of stuff on Instagram and even on LinkedIn about all the fundraising that goes on for like cleft palate treatment in third world countries. So I think that's a really, really fascinating concept here. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Amazing. And we have Monica who's held her hand up.
Hi, Tony. This was
you?
really, really interesting. It's so nice to see also a different point of view. I'm in Europe, so hearing also about USA and how things work out there, it's so interesting. So my question is about the remote working and the global working. As we saw, it's really easy now, I would say, to find jobs all over the places, all over the world. But is it really that, I don't know, company in the US, for example, are
hiring?
That interesting? Yeah, in hiring people from all over the world because.
Well, okay, so a couple of different things there. It's not easy to get a job in the U.S. Obviously, by not being a U.S. citizen. We have to go through sponsorships, and even with our doctors, they have to go through sponsorships if they are not U.S. citizens. But what we do is we hire through other groups. So if there is a recruitment agency in your country, like I said, we do use offshore in India. And these companies hire the employees, and then we do a contract with the company in that country. And so I have quite a few employees right now that are not working for me directly, but they report to me directly, but their pay and everything else is through an agency in another country. But they are part of our business. We do meetings together. We do, all our different planning and strategies. They manage all of the database, all of the emails. They do the website. So again, they work for our company, but they're not getting paid for our company. They're getting paid by the agency that they're with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Seems like a fair thing from both sides.
It makes it easier. It makes it easier.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it so much easier. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Monica. So, Tony, that brings an end to our conversation. What a riveting one it's been. How have you found today?
I'm very, very interested, and it's been great. I like the exchange of ideas that you have and whatever I had to say, and I'm now more interested to see what really the UK healthcare system's about. So I'm going to do some follow-up to see what that looks like. Yeah,
absolutely. It's an interesting space at the moment, and if you want to expand, for instance, Tony, what you're doing, it could be a good space to expand over here. But what I tend to ask our guests at the end is, if you could leave the world with, or the world you're listening right now with, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Right now, from an employment opportunity, get involved in your next career and make sure that you take advantage of the current employment situation to really set yourself up for whatever happens in the future. You have the voice, you have their interests, you have the opportunity to say to your employer, I am not an employee, I'm part of this organization, and I want you to value me as a part of your organization.
Boom. I'll end it at that point. Well done, Tony. That was great. That was really good. Thank you so much. Thanks.